This podcast is produced by The Brand is Female.
Always with me. Aspirational land. Always was, always with me.
Tansei, hello, and welcome back to the Matriarch Movement podcast. I'm your host, Shayla Oulette Stonechild, and I'm very excited to have Lesley Hampton here with me today. She is an Anishinaabe artist and fashion designer focused on mental health awareness, body positivity, and authentic representation in fashion, film, and media. She is the creative director of Lesley Hampton, an Indigenous-owned, size-inclusive clothing and accessory brand based in Toronto. I was actually just in Toronto with her a few weeks ago, shooting her new spring campaign line. If you're very into floral print and pastel colors, I invite you to check it out. It drops on June 2nd, and 10% of everything purchased will go back to the Matriarch Movement profit, so you'll also be supporting me and her. We talk a little bit about what her experience has been like in the fashion industry. We also talk about cultural appropriation versus appreciation, some of her highlights of her career, one being dressing Lizzo, and what she hopes for the rest of the year. This week's episode of Matriarch Movement is brought to you by our partners at Louvre Design. Louvre is a socially responsible fashion retailer and manufacturer specializing in sustainable women's clothing, with all pieces made and designed right here in Canada. You know, I support women like it's my day job, and Louvre is 100% female owned and female led, which is an A+ in my books. Finding sustainable clothing that doesn't break the bank is literally not easy, but Louvre has set out to change that. Even better, you can be sure that everyone Louvre works with are getting fair wages, and we know how important it is to bridge the gender wage gap. All the clothing is as comfortable as your yoga gear, but chic enough to wear on your next Zoom call, with modern staples and playful prints that you'll literally want to wear every single day. Check out Louvre for yourself at louvredesign.com. That's LOUVE design.com, and get free shipping on your next order with the code ShaylaShipping, all one word, at checkout.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Lesley Hampton, and I'm a member of Tamagami First Nation, but I also identify as a third culture kid. I spent a lot of my upbringing moving around across Canada and internationally. So I take all of those experiences of who I am and I bring it into this incredible world that is the fashion industry. And I'm really hoping to push for more inclusive fashion with a focus on mental health awareness, body positivity, and authentic representation in fashion and media.
So you grew up where? I've never heard that phrase before. Third cultured kid? Is that how you describe it? And what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Third culture kid. Yeah. So it means that someone grew up outside of their home country in their formative years. So before 18. So because of my dad's career choice, we ended up moving every 2.5 years from when I was born to age 18. And I was born in Newfoundland, so I'm actually a Newfie, and then moved to Calgary, Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, back to Newfoundland, and then my parents moved to New Caledonia, which is an island like Fiji off the coast of Australia, but it is a French-speaking colony. So I ended up going to boarding school in Australia, and then we all moved to Indonesia, and then again to England, and England is where I graduated high school, and then I came back to Canada for university.
I had no idea that you spent most of your childhood traveling literally throughout different countries. And so what brought you back to Canada? Why do you feel called? Because you're now living in Toronto, right?
Yeah. I, straight out of high school, I didn't really know what to do for career choice. And at the time, my parents were moving to Oakville, so the GTA around Toronto. And so I didn't really know what to do. I applied to 13 universities because I had no idea even what career choice I wanted. I went from psychology to animal husbandry to art. And I actually applied for a fashion program in New York, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up in Mississauga studying art studio and art history.
So fashion came like a little bit more after in your life. It wasn't really something that you saw in childhood at the beginning.
Yeah, I growing up, I was always a big fan of different shoes and running shoes and things, so I had a different pair of shoes on every day. But no, the fashion only came once I was studying art, and I realized that all my artwork, whether it was drawing or sculpture, it all had to do with the association around the body and what we put on the body, that conversation from what you wear and what that can say. So it was just a natural jump over after I started making all these wearable art pieces, a natural jump to the fashion industry and using fashion as a way of storytelling and making artwork, whether it be wearable artwork or otherwise, that actually has a message to it.
Yeah, I love how every one of your pieces tells a story. You don't really have to like convey it through writing or verbally. It's just like as soon as it's on the runway or in the photos, it's like it kind of speaks for itself. And so what was your experience like going through school? Was it design school? Like what school did you go to and how long was that process in itself?
Yeah, so my art program was 4 years, but then after that, I studied at George Brown College for fashion techniques and design. But I actually, because I was so eager to change the industry and I knew exactly the type of brand that I wanted to be, I started my brand actually the first week that I started George Brown. So I would take what I was learning in class during the day and bring it to my collections in the evening time. And then during the development of my first collection, within the first semester of fashion school, I was lucky enough to showcase at Vancouver Fashion Week and have that work shared pretty widely as well.
And I know you've been in the fashion industry for a few years now. I honestly don't know how many years, but do you feel like the industry is now changing from when you first started? Because like you said, there wasn't a lot of people talking about inclusivity and there's probably not a lot of Indigenous designers especially. So has it been evolving since you first started? And in what ways do you think it still has to evolve?
Yeah, I started in 2016 was when my first collection was released. And I didn't really see any body types like me in the fashion industry, whether it be on the runway or in the executive positions. So I think it has been a slow shift, but I definitely think we're on the uphill there with organizations like Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto and Vancouver Indigenous Fashion Week. It's really putting Indigenous designers, providing them the platform and the stage that we also deserve. And showing how great the storytelling can be included within the fashion. And it is getting picked up by major press, major outlets across mainstream fashion as well. I know writers for Vogue make it their priority to write about Indigenous designers. And we're continuing to just push forward there.
Well, I was just on your Instagram earlier and you just had another Vogue article mention you of 5 Canadian designers to watch for. And I'm curious, like, when you are identified as a Canadian designer, do you resonate with the word Canadian or would you rather be spoken about in a different way? When I hear Canadian and Indigenous, sometimes I just feel like cognitive dissonance because I'm like, we're older than Canada itself. But do you feel called to be called a Canadian designer or what would you rather prefer?
This is a hard one for me because I grew up internationally. I had such a resonance with being called Canadian, and it was always something I even had to fight for. So my time in Australia, the people I was around didn't have a differentiation between like the U.S. and Canada. They just called me American because I'm from North America.
Right.
So that was very hard because I'm like, oh no, I'm not American, I'm Canadian, and I'm very proud of that, but I do know since coming back to Canada and understanding that the relationship even more from a firsthand viewpoint, I think I'm still learning to figure out all of that.
Yeah, so much like soul searching and identity is it's always an interesting conversation here in Canada, especially when you're Indigenous. I had a follower actually, they're wondering how did your design career start out, and so that essentially started when you went to school, but you already had the vision.
Yeah, through my artwork and my art education, I really understood the backing behind the conceptual basis backing that creative work can have. So I approached fashion the same way, where I wanted that artist statement to be included within the fashion work and have a clear vision of what my work represented. But with fashion, there's so many other aspects of it, from lookbook to campaign shoot to the runway show to how you advertise the work. There's all those facets as well that fashion allows me to continue pushing for this inclusivity message. And I just love being able to do it every season and seeing how it inspires others to do so.
That was going to be my next question, is how far in advance do you usually plan out a campaign or a collection? Do you plan one out every season? So is that like 4 seasons, 4 collections, or how does that work?
Pre-COVID, I was doing 2 collections a year, and pretty much right when the previous collection was completed, then I would start kind of brainstorming and finding fabrics and whatnot for the next collection. But I usually have a number of collection concepts already in my mind, kind of just building, and then it's whichever one kind of works for that timing, what's going on in the world and things like that, and what I want to put out there.
What has been your favorite collection so far to make? And maybe, like, I feel like as for me, sometimes when I put work out there, I have evolved so much as an artist that sometimes I look at that old work and I'm just like, I could have done better. But is there a collection that you just is one of your favorites that you have worked on so far in your career?
Ooh, my top favorite would have been the first collection that I showed for Toronto Fashion Week, and it was called 1876, and it was my exploration into my indigeneity, and figuring out how I can tell that idea of learning about my identity, but through fashion. And it was, we casted all Indigenous models for the runway. We had all Indigenous accessories. And it was just really exciting to be able to bring the indigeneity to Toronto Fashion Week, because that was really never seen prior. And the platform that I was provided, being accepted to show at Toronto Fashion Week, I really wanted to kind of bring my community with me and show what Indigenous people are capable of on an incredible stage like Toronto Fashion Week.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point that I've been having in a lot of my discussions, and this community driven. Like the way we do work, I'm always thinking about my community, and I'm always thinking of how I can collaborate with other people and co-create, because I feel like sometimes in the fashion industry, there's this tokenization of Indigenous people, or they think that we voice all Indigenous people, and that's not the case. And so when it comes to co-creation, what do you look for when you co-create with other Indigenous people? And are there current designers out there, other Indigenous designers that you're inspired by?
I always feel like I'm learning because I didn't grow up in community. I really find that within the Indigenous community that I revolve myself with, and that very much has to do with the Indigenous fashion community, and I learned very much from those partnerships. So a recent collaboration that we did was with Scott Wabano for our Hampton Wabano jacket, and that was inspired by the healing capabilities of the cones used on jingle dresses. And as someone who didn't grow up with powwow or those teachings, it was really great to turn to Scott and have their conceptual basis on how to bring that into a modern day luxury fashion piece. And we really both took our strengths as someone who grew up on reservation and someone who grew up internationally, and bringing those together in a piece was just really exciting for myself to learn about all those teachings in such a creative space, and then to really uplift him as well as a new designer.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know the piece, that one jacket that I'm wearing on Yoga Journal with the jingle dress, what do you call them?
The jingle cones?
the jingle cones. That was designed by Lesley and Scott. And I would imagine, you know, when we are bringing traditional values or traditional knowledge and birthing them into a modern day society, I feel like there is a lot of, you know, opinions out there, whether they're negative or positive. And so how do you deal with maybe the negative feedback that you may sometimes probably get, if you do? How do you remain truthful to you and your work?
It's a learning curve for sure for me, because like maybe other Indigenous people who didn't grow up in community, I find that reconnection process to be a bumpy road. And when people are attacking my indigeneity and saying I'm not Indigenous enough to create work like this, it's hard for me to have that confidence and say, yes, I deserve this. So I have my ups and downs and I have my good days and bad days, but I do know that the work that myself and my team are putting out there into the world, and being a strong Indigenous voice in the fashion community will only uplift other members of the Indigenous fashion community, and to bring them up with me, and pave the way so that it's an easier uphill battle for them.
Yeah, I think you touched on always learning, like you're kind of always learning, and that's also through creating with other Indigenous designers. I'm curious to know, like, when you, because when you have a vision, it starts with a vision, but then you're like, oh, I need more people on my team to make this vision happen. And so what had to happen for you to have the team that you now work with, and how many people does that consist of?
Right. It always starts with the relationship that I have with the individual. For someone like Scott, who we recently took on in an internship role as well as the partnership role, I was actually working with him. We did we worked at Manitoba Mucklucks together when they were doing pop-ups. So he was actually my superior working at the store. He was my manager, and I was working under him. So that was really funny that we kind of had both those ways of having a relationship. And then likewise with the team that I work with day in and day out at the studio, they are people that I graduated George Brown with. So they were my friends, and I really appreciated their work ethic. So I took them on to my team. And then similarly, when I'm booking lookbook models or people part of my the creative process once the collection's done, it's really seeing how great they are as an individual and what their message is. I really want to bring people on my team who have that incredibly strong voice and messaging to represent kind of what I'm pushing for as a whole as well.
Yeah, you've worked with quite a few models: Serene Fox, Ashley Collingbull, Shayla Stonechild. Okay, when you brought up Manitoba Mucklucks, I had like this vision, because I actually worked at a Manitoba Mucklucks in Costco for like a brief second.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, like my first shift, I ran into one of my ex-boyfriends, and he runs into me, and I'm like, I haven't seen this guy in a year, and I'm running into him at Costco. Like, what is... So yeah, it's funny how you meet people sometimes and it brings you together. So we just did a shoot in Toronto, and so what was the inspiration behind your new collection that will be coming out in June?
Yeah, June 2nd is when the next collection's coming out. And it's all around a post-lockdown self-confidence and kind of a strive for body neutrality. I feel like with the pandemic, we've all gone through ups and downs with our body, and it's not about being 100% happy with your body, but it's having that understanding and that acknowledgement that this body is the only one that you're going to have, and you have to treat it with respect and have that healthy relationship to it. And it's almost like a bad hair day. You can have a bad body image day. No one's going to attack you or anything for that. But to know that the next day that's coming is going to be better and positive is kind of what we wanted to say with this collection through the colors and through the shapes and silhouettes that we used for this piece.
Thank you, hi to our friends at Louvre Design for supporting this episode. As a yoga teacher and a spiritual revolution activist, my whole being is rooted in wellness, but not just of the body and spirit. Protecting Indigenous culture means protecting the land we belong to. The fashion industry is one of the most important sources of waste on our planet, but Louvre has set out to prove that sustainable fashion can be the norm. Protecting the planet, the people, and the animals are values most important to Louvre, and I stand firmly behind them. 25% of the pieces are actually made with upcycled fabrics, and the remainder of the fabrics are made with renewable materials like organic cotton, bamboo, modal, and tencel. This is the comfy modern brand you can be proud to wear. Don't forget to visit louvedesign.com, that's L-O-U-V-E design.com, and get free shipping on your next order with the code SHAYLASHIPPING, all one word, at checkout. And like touching on body positivity, I've been hearing the term body neutrality a lot more often now, just being like completely neutral with your body, like not having to love it, but not having to hate it.
Exactly.
And speaking of Lizzo has worn your pieces. How did that come to be? And do you feel like you lean more towards body positivity or body neutrality? How would you define your relationship to your own body?
So Lizzo came about because one of my team members was a very big fan of Lizzo right from the beginning. So when Lizzo was coming to Toronto for one of her early shows, we reached out to her team and we just we pretty much said, can we gift you some items and can she wear them? Maybe. And then it was actually a year and a half after that communication that she ended up actually posting and wearing the work. So it was a long,
oh wow,
again, a long uphill battle to have it come full circle, but it was just so incredible and just so on brand for us and Lizzo to wear the athletic wear items and be working out during COVID, like in her personal space, and just to see her relationship experiencing the clothing was just really beautiful. And then, body neutrality is a new one for me as well. And I know Lizzo talks about it a lot. For me, I've been within this fashion industry for a number of years, and that's kind of given my body image kind of a run for its money because I am a curvy individual, because I am Indigenous, I don't look like the typical fashion person. And I sometimes have bad days, sometimes have good days, but during this pandemic, it's been focusing on my body and focusing on my mental health that's really gotten me through when work wasn't there or the physical community wasn't there as much just because we couldn't gather in person. So it was really turning inward and looking at myself and how I need to better myself to move forward and stay strong.
Yeah, I can definitely relate because that was kind of my intention. One of the things I wanted to do when I was younger was go into the modeling industry. And I was actually in a pageant when I was like 16 and they told me to lose weight. And like that was just like, now I just have like almost this resistance towards the modeling industry and towards the pageant lifestyle because there is a lot of toxic like relationships that they stem on you through your body image and through your physical well-being. And so, I really resonate with the term body neutrality, knowing that like no matter where you are on the scale, like we all have our good and our bad days. Exactly. And for me, when I'm having a bad day, I do yoga and I meditate, but I'm curious for you, like what are your practices in your life that pick you back up again when maybe you're feeling a little bit off?
Going for a walk for me is a huge one. I live by the water in downtown Toronto, so just to have that experience with nature and kind of feel out of the city as best I can, or when I am able to travel to go out and go on hikes and things like that is a big one for me to kind of get away from it all and only think about myself and my body. Another one for me during COVID was making a safe space for myself even within my home where I live with other individuals. I really invested into my patio space so that I can have the sun, have that outdoor feel. and make it what I want it, and kind of have it be my little oasis.
Nice. Yeah, like a little sacred space.
Exactly.
And COVID has all affected us to different degrees. And so for you, you know, what were some of your challenges this year, and what are you looking forward to?
A big challenge, I would say, for me was juggling work and personal life, home life, because I started in this industry so quickly, and I rose up pretty quickly as well, that I was forgetting about myself, and I was forgetting about me as the individual, and I was only focusing on Lesley Hampton the brand. So I didn't factor in hours to work out or hours to journal or anything like that. It was always what can we do for the business? And then when COVID happened, everything pretty much stopped. The personal me caught up to the business me, and I had a number of ups and downs from that, and I really knew that I had to invest in my mental health, or else if I'm not thriving, the business is not going to thrive. And I need that comfort in myself, where if I do have a bad press day or something like that, I'll know that I can come through, and I know that confidence in myself. I am still learning that, and I have had a few amazing press days and a few bad press days, and I have to remember that the press does not define me, and the work that I do and the personal relationships that I've seen that my work affect people with, to see that is really what has to push me forward, and not the superficial titles and things like that.
Yeah, no, I totally, this is what I've been kind of dealing with too, because like branding is one thing, and then who you are as a person, sometimes it feels like it could be totally opposite. And so I call it kind of like your matrix life, like your superficial avatar life, and then your real life. And I'm like, how can we like mesh the two so that it's not like I'm living like two separate identities? But one person I just had another interview with was Tanya Talaga, and she's really been trailblazing the journalism industry as an Indigenous woman. And she was saying how, you know, as an Indigenous woman trailblazing an industry she's never seen herself represented in, you are operating as an Indigenous person, and you're thinking about everything that you have to think about, how it affects your community, is this part of protocol, and then there's your actual work. And so I imagine for you probably go through the same thought process, and not only that, but you have literally magazines and TV and news people writing about you. And so I don't know if that was a rant, but I'm just like, how do you not let that get to you? Like, how do you not let the I guess internet get to you?
I'm still learning that. I unfortunately still like search myself up on Twitter and read some of those bad comments, whether it even comes down to like the pricing of my work. And it's really hard for like even just small comments like that, where I know I have a reason for why my work is priced at a certain price point. But just to hear someone who wants me to price my work for maybe like at a fast fashion price, that it's just so hard, because I'm one individual, and then my team is day in and day out. There's only 3 of us in studio.
Wow.
So
I didn't know there was only 3 of you.
So it's not a major team of people in manufacturing, and when you email us, you're emailing me. So to get to I'm still learning. Still learning. And I'm going to keep learning until I hopefully figure it out, and then can give more knowledge on how to deal with the internet.
Well, I think it just, like, we got to give ourselves more credit, because I think that's, and you, like, your work, I would pay what you ask for. Like, your work is literally like pieces of art. Like, you're getting your money's worth. It's quantity, like, not quantity, quality. It's not use the opposite word. It's quality. Another question from one of the followers, she asked, do you have any advice on how to face cultural appropriation in fashion? Should we be calling the brands out?
I would say absolutely. I've seen a number of brands get called out for cultural appropriation, and I think it's the more we share that knowledge, and the more we show what's appropriate and what is appropriation, people will begin to learn, because a lot of people think Indigenous fashion even is like this subculture, whereas we were the first fashion on this land that is North America, that is Turtle Island. We were the first ones, so kind of all the other fashion is like the subculture that came in. So I think remembering what is appreciation, what's appropriation, and to call out when it's needed is the only way, unfortunately, some people will learn.
Yeah, because I know like some people do send emails, but that usually like, did you just see that post on Instagram about the Converse? Like the the woman like emailed Converse, didn't get a response, so then she posted on social media. And so I think in a way sometimes this is the fastest way to get brands to be accountable to their appropriation or to just downright stealing other people's designs.
Even looking at Diet Prada, an Instagram account, on the way they call out, and they have the fact that their following is so massive, and people will give them tips, and them posting about it and people actually talking about it online makes that shift. I think is really important. The more people we have bringing it to the forefront.
Have anyone tried to steal your designs? I'm curious.
Not that I'm aware of. Not yet, no.
And I know people are gonna ask this question, but are non-Indigenous people allowed to wear your designs and what you make?
Absolutely, yes. Everything we make is for all body types and all ethnicities. Yeah.
Everyone. Everyone has been asking you questions. So another one was, how do you deal with lateral violence within the fashion industry if you have to deal with lateral violence?
I have received a few comments for lateral violence around certain projects that I've done. And again, it was tough for me because at the time I was struggling with my mental health and I was struggling with my identity. And to have those comments, and also the pre-perceived knowledge, a lot of people think that I'm 100% white because of my name. Comes from my dad's side, and he is. So to have just to have comments like that don't make me feel Indigenous enough to tell certain stories and to make certain work, and especially that coming from the community and individuals that I want to be a part of, and I want to make them happy. It is very tough, but everybody is on their own path for healing, and it might not be about me at all. It might not be about my work or anything, and it just might be how they have to let out their pain in the moment.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I feel like some people, well, everyone's on their own healing journey. And for me, sometimes when I would even lash out at people when I was younger, it was because I was looking through a lens of trauma, and like I had to really reflect on my own behavior and, you know, what I needed to heal. Moving forward into 2021, I know you have been awarded a couple awards this past week. Like, how many awards have you got?
Only 2.
Only 2 in like the same 48 hours.
Exactly. It was, it was an exciting end of a week.
What award was the first one?
So I received the Fashion Impact Award from the Canadian Arts and Fashion Awards, and that is for either a community or philanthropic impact on the fashion industry. And my collection was really based around that 1876 show that I mentioned prior, around bringing Indigenous people and Indigenous artisans and models and everything onto the Toronto Fashion Week runway. And I think from that, there was a shift in the fashion industry for people who maybe didn't experience Indigenous fashion or Indigenous people, and showed and represented what current day Indigenous people look like and dress like. It's not the stereotypes that we see, and I think for the fashion community, that was really impactful for them, and I think that's why I got the award.
Yeah, congrats. And then the second one was for what?
And then I received my second award was the Inspire Awards in the youth category, which is for Indigenous excellence. And that was a really big one for me because I have had these ups and down struggles with my indigeneity, and to be awarded that award was really cemented the work that I was doing in the Indigenous fashion community and with myself as an individual. It was just really, really, I'm so proud.
I'm so proud of you.
Can't even put it into words yet.
Congrats. Like, we definitely gonna have to celebrate when I get back to Toronto.
Exactly.
And, you know, when we look to the future, for me as an Indigenous person, sometimes I want to collaborate with other brands out there that are more mainstream. And so do you have like a thought process or like some kind of like, for me, people don't understand as an Indigenous artist how much thought you have to put into partnering with some brands. You have to put in their history, their ethics. You got to be worried about cancel culture, lateral violence. And so do you have a thought process when it comes to partnering up with other brands? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like?
I have a few collaborations in the works as well that might go along these lines of what you're explaining, and I think we just have to figure out how we're going to move forward. You can look at the history of a brand or a company and understand that, and you do have to look to the past so you know how to move forward. But I think as long as there's the initiatives in place for them to right their wrongs and do better, or if it has to do with manufacturing, where are they going in those avenues? Mm-hmm. I think as long as the effort is there, we can guide them as Indigenous people, as Indigenous creatives. We can guide them along a better path, and then hopefully bring our community in as well, and then again pave the way.
Exactly. Like, people are always like, the youngest generation will lead us. And it's like, yeah, but when you are the young generation, sometimes it's scary because, like, you are literally taking into account history in itself. So, yeah, how can you practice more gratitude to the artists that are paving the way out there? What would your advice be to a young, Indigenous artist wanting to get into the fashion industry?
I would say just reach out to people who you look up to. See if you can get an internship with them, see if you can even just shadow them for a day or something like that. Or something else I would say is, if you say want to dress Lizzo or want to do something major like that, don't be afraid to just shoot the emails out there and see where those lead to. For myself, even early on in my career, I got the biggest media stories and things like that just from an email that I sent at 2 a.m. to someone who I wanted to be on my runway or something like that. And that's really pushed me to the next level in my fashion career.
Yeah, because you said you started out in 2016 and you've already been featured in so many magazines. You've already won so many awards. What for you has been like one of the highlights of your career so far? Aside from the Lizzo and aside from all the great stuff we've already talked about, you have a great...
I have a few peaks that they seem to happen every year and a half, and they really just blow my mind in how great the fashion industry is becoming and how much it's changing and how much people appreciate that shift. One of the first ones would be... one of my earlier shows, when I did just email someone in the middle of the night, like trying to get them onto my runway, was Adrienne Haslett, and she is a Boston bombing survivor and became an amputee because of the incident. And to show her strength, we invited her onto our runway show at Vancouver Fashion Week, and to show her strength, not only with what she overcame, but how incredible she is as a person now, to have that represent my fashion on a runway was just so incredible. And then that again became went pretty viral across Canada and the US. So to have stories like that and then have those keep going. Similarly with our Golden Globes gown and how wide that went. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do next, because I've really the community has been so great in uplifting me thus far.
Yeah, I'm really into like manifestation and like visualizing and like going after the goals. And so do you have any processes that you work with, you know, personally when it comes to manifestation or visualization or what you want for the future?
Um, I have like secret goals that I don't really share too publicly. And I think just thinking about those every day, and I guess it is manifestation, even though I'm not putting it out into the world publicly, I think those goals really kind of keep me going. But then even small goals too, like something for us for 2021 is to add Demi Lovato to our dressing list. Celebrities that we've dressed, just because I love her story and what's happened to her in the last few years, and her strength that she's had to overcome it. So things like that, where I can put that out into the world. But then I have a lot of other projects and ideas that I just manifesting.
I like how you say Demi Lovato is like a small goal. It's just one of my small goals.
Smaller, I don't know.
So the word matriarch, the reason why I started this podcast is because we don't have a lot of spaces that amplify our voices in the way that we want to be heard and the way that we want to share. And so when you think of the word matriarch, how would you define a matriarch? And are there matriarchs that you're currently inspired by?
I would define it being the women that we look up to and who push us forward and uplift us, and inspire us. Me, for my whole life, it's always been my mom, who's been my matriarch. I call her my third culture matriarch, because we have a similar kind of out of your home community upbringing. So traveling with her and always having someone like her to lean on to was really great, is really great. And I kind of get that same feeling for individuals within the community that I can look up to or follow or reach out to for advice. Even people like Sage Paul of Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto, where I can just call her up or text her and ask her a question or advice on something. People like that, I think we all need that type of matriarch in our lives, to really guide us and help us to move forward.
I think it's coming back to the full circle of how we kind of started this interview, was about community and having that community-based goals in mind. And so there's this idea of Indigenous futurism and moving towards the future. And so what do you hope for when you hear the word Indigenous futurism?
My mind goes to in relation to the fashion industry, and I really want to see Indigenous designers allow Indigenous designers to take up space in those big department stores with the like Chanel or all those Burberry, like those big shops that fully encompass what the brand is. I really want to see Indigenous people take up those spaces, and be the forefronts of fashion on the land that is ours.
Exactly. Well, like you said, like all your pieces tie in a story, and that's what fashion is. And so what better way to tell our stories rather than to be within those advertisements in itself. And so moving into 2021, I know we kind of touched base on what's coming up for you, but how can people support your work and check out your new collection that's coming out?
Absolutely. So you can always find us by Googling us, Lesley Hampton. Or our next collection is coming out on June 2nd at lesleyhampton.com. And you'll see a bunch of photos of Shayla on there wearing our incredible designs, and great posing as well. And really just showing, again, different body types, because different body types, whether it's athletic or curvy or all those different avenues within the fashion industry. And then you can follow me on Instagram, Lesley_Hampton. As well as TikTok, Lesley_Hampton.
Oh, yeah.
I'm new to TikTok.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Lesley, for sharing your energy and your wisdom and your time today. Make sure you look out for the new collection. I was a little disappointed you say that wasn't your favorite. Just kidding.
Only because I haven't been able to show it yet. It's
jokes. Awesome. Well, thank you. And make sure you follow Lesley. I'll drop all her handles below here. Hi. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I would love your feedback. Follow me on Instagram at Shayla0H, at matriarch.movement, and don't forget to subscribe on the pod platform of your choice and review and rate where possible. I'll be back in a week. Hi. Thank you so much for tuning in.